Oh man, now it feels weird to be like, Jenna, who won? Like,
Do you know what's good? Do you know what's good is my therapist listens to the podcast. So, hey
oh,
buddy,
perfect.
this was for you. Let's make sure we talk about this at the end of next
Hey,
week.
buddy, I want to meet you.
And hello. Welcome back.
Welcome back to Whyte Noise. I'm Michael.
I'm Ryan.
And Ryan, who's joining us today?
We have the absolutely fabulous Jena Plummer. So, Jena and James, you guys went to high school together? Did I get that right, or was it different high schools and associated friends?
So Rick and I worked together at the ShopRite, and that's how I was connected to James. I know we go way back, and I couldn't understand him because he mumbles a lot. And then he introduced me to James, and it was, love at first sight. So
Pretty fair. And then we've had a lot of fun through the years, numerous highlights and lack of memories. I would say one of my primary one was your bachelorette party.
that was our first meeting, actually.
Was that the first time we met?
That was the first time we met. You showed up, you showed me a wonderful time, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah, we threw down hard that night. I believe I have a legendary lack of memories from Feathers.
That was the only time I went to Feathers, too, because I was already living down here in North Carolina by then.
It was my first time at Feathers, too. Feathers is a gay bar in Bergen County, New Jersey. I think it's the only gay bar in Bergen County, New Jersey. And for those who are listening, Bergen County is it the most northern county in New Jersey? It's basically like the wealthiest county in New Jersey. Like everyone works in Manhattan or something like that. And it's got blue laws, so nothing's open on Sundays. And, it's a great county. It's a great place to grow up. But at the same time, it's maybe a little bit stuffy.
Very much stuffy. It was more fun than I could have anticipated. I owe that all to James and Ryan and all of our friends.
It's fun making memories that then you don't remember, but you know that they were good.
And it's worth noting for friends of the pod or people who love the pod, Jena and Jordan are best friends.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jordan's a recurring guest star.
Yes.
Yeah, so Jordan and I met through a sticky note that said we should be friends. We had dated the same person sort of, and then decided we didn't need beef. And then I adopted her into my life, and then she started dating Rick, who was my actual best friend. And it just, now I don't even know Rick, so.
I don't know who you're talking about. Rick who?
Yeah.
And Jena, you are a fabulous therapist. And do you want to tell us a little bit about your practice and what you do? And I think it plays in very well to why we have you on today for this topic, because we feel like you'll have a great stance or opinions or thoughts or whatever on our topic today.
Selfishly, we just wanted a free therapy session. This is couples therapy.
I can support you.
Great.
I'm the owner of a group practice in Greensboro, North Carolina, which is a little small townish city down here. We specialize in working with queer and neurodivergent folks. We treat everything, though. And we also do some work with substance use, with all sorts of things. So that's what I do.
Very cool. Oh, we lost Ryan.
Oh, no.
Ryan. He just tuned out. He couldn't handle it.
He's asleep here there before.
He fell asleep.
On forever.
A friend of mine was on, and both of our internet kept cutting out. It was just this poor friend. She was the only one who was and she was like, what's happening? What is this thing that you do? Because we both just kept freezing. She was just like, ugh, how am I the only one who has her shit together?
Me, always.
This is why you do what you do. You help people organize themselves then, if you're the grounding force.
Well, I might be grounding to others, but I'm also internal chaos. That's why the ADHD is loud with this one.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Later in life diagnosed, and I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Wait, how does that work when you're do you have then ways that you focus when you're working with patients, or is that something that you just inherently zero in on?
So the misunderstanding about ADHD is its lack of focus, but it's really lack of focus when you're not interested. So it's super stimulating to me to be in someone's brain and sort of understanding them. So I have no problem tracking that. But don't ask me what my husband just said. You know what I mean? Something about football, right?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
I have no idea what just happened. I hotspotted my phone, and hopefully that'll give me stability here. So I apologize.
Well, we've been chatting.
Yeah. That's a little rapport. I feel more comfortable now, you know?
Is this your way of telling me that I made you uncomfortable, Jena?
Chronically, and that's why I love you.
Like a moth to the flame.
Today, we're talking about what is right and wrong. I think it's important to share. So it came out of the conversation that we had last week in the podcast that went out, that is about, do we live in a simulation or multiple realities? And I think the conversation kind of boiled down to, does it matter, right? Because existence is existence. And I think it then led into the whole idea of like, okay, if the idea of existence, or we just exist, is what it is there really any concept of right or wrong? So we've gone from like one big theoretical concept into another. I'm kind of interested to see where we go with it. It took me a while to land on where I landed, because it was intense. It's an intense thought process.
Jena, who would you like to hear from first?
I'm going Michael.
Okay. Let me know.
All right. Ready, set, go.
So, when I got the topic, what is right versus wrong, my brain went in like 13 different directions. So I decided to start on just vaguely what is that process of right versus wrong. Because I feel like it's such a grand concept that we as humans have just tried to sort of make sense of as we go along. And really it comes down to like morality, right? Like, what is morality? Because I feel like that's the basis of right versus wrong, is like morality, empathy, all that stuff. And I feel like it is ever changing. So I read about it, and I read one quick thing that was basically the core of our right versus wrong is just our emotional response to something, right? So if something is good, we have a positive emotional response to it versus a negative one, which is how we first tried to decipher what's right versus wrong. So if something made us scared, angry, upset, pain, that's a bad thing. If it made us happy, whatever, good thing. I don't know. I didn't really get into the brain chemistry of it, just the emotional response. And it was an interesting reminder to me that it's like, oh, that's all right versus wrong is. Because I did see they did one study where they presented people with like moral, quote unquote, options. And most people, most people in a, good psychological state, I guess you could say, people without existing psychological issues, generally picked, the similar things of right versus wrong. And then they presented them with negative stimuli, like bad smells or bad sounds. And then they gave them the same basic things, and they leaned more towards the negative just because their emotional state was in like a bad place, which I thought was interesting, that your version of right versus wrong also comes from the perspective of how you feel in that moment. I was like, so it is purely emotional, which is so interesting, and it all depends on context. So I was like, okay, great. So there is no hard, fast line. And then this was like, then I met my parents, and there's 4 dogs in the house, and they all started barking. And I was like, okay, so that's vaguely how people do right versus wrong. Do animals understand right versus wrong? And then I started reading, and apparently this is a hot topic in the scientific community as to if animals understand right versus wrong. And they've done studies with, I guess, a lot of dogs, and then with rats, obviously, and different primates. But apparently scientists are really divided on this. And I think it comes down to that line of, is right or wrong purely to do with morality and empathy? And do animals understand morality? And I will say where I ended up on is that they do. Because also, do they understand part of that is fairness? And so one study had 2 dogs, and they were training them, and then like they gave them treats in response to certain things, and then they took away the treats for one dog and were only giving treats to the other one, and they were still expecting the same behavior. And then obviously the one who didn't get the treats was like and started to act up, because clearly they were like, that is not fair. I'm upset. This is wrong. Like, this is the sense of like, I am being wronged. Therefore, you don't deserve this. And then I was like, oh, we see this in pets all the time. Like, if your dog is upset with you, it does something to punish you, which again plays into that, like, you've done something wrong. Therefore, I have to teach you that you have wronged me so you understand what is right. Like, if a dog's upset and poops on your bed, even though it knows it's not supposed to do that, it's like sort of the same as us punishing them, which I think is interesting that they sort of teach us lessons. If they're like, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but you've done something to hurt me, therefore you need to be punished. You are wrong. I am teaching you this. And so it's still an ongoing study, but I thought that was a really interesting thing that we can see every day in pets, especially with dogs, I think more than like cats, because dogs now are, I guess, more empathetic than cats are.
And also maybe, I was thinking about our conversation we had about the bonobos back in...
Oh, yeah. What was that again?
That was about the bonobos, the monkeys that basically they're a matriarchal society. They resolve their problems via sex and sexual expression.
Oh, yeah, which is great.
But it's like downplays and it chills things out. So they have a clear understanding of like, by, I guess, introducing the right sort of like hormones and expectations through things, you can bring peace to society. I don't know, I'm probably summarizing that wrong, but yeah, I was going to say that's what it immediately made me think of.
Could you imagine if we lived in society where that's how we've resolved our differences? Like, you're at work and there's the break room.
I mean, some people
room.
do.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
They're like, you two, go work it out, but use a condom. But yeah, I think that's interesting. But there were some scientists that read about that where like, no, right and wrong has nothing to do with empathy or morality. It's about following a structure, and animals don't understand that. But I also disagree with that because I feel like we see that in social structures with animals all the time. Like elephants who follow rules, who also like mourn the loss of when they lose a member of their herd and they mourn its loss, but then they also clearly have very strict social structures. Same with like whales. Especially like dolphins, orcas, humpback whales, like have very set social structures where they support each other and follow rules.
Did you see that there was an orca just recently that was caught carrying its dead calf? Like,
for a long time.
Yeah, for a long time, mourning the loss of the calf, which I thought was pretty incredible.
And also, like, I was just in Alaska and they were talking about humpback whales versus orca there. And there's like two different kinds of orca. I guess there are ones that come from outside that are way more violent, as opposed to the ones that live in Alaska full time that really just eat salmon, and they will like work with the humpback whales, which we actually got to see firsthand, which was really wild. We saw humpback whales feeding and then the orcas like going around them picking up scraps. It was really cool watching two different species like work together. But then the outsiders, I guess, will try and eat humpback whale babies. And along with really anything else, they're those sort of like the ones you read about that attack like fishing boats and stuff. They're the sort of like wild vigilante pirates of the sea. And they were like, they've seen now humpback whales like actively protecting other species from those specific kinds of killer whales for no other reason but to piss off the whales. Or they'll go up and just like whack them. Like they'll just hit them to be like, no, you are like, because they clearly don't like their behavior. And it's that other thing of like, so clearly, yes, other species must understand right versus wrong. So this is humpback whales being like, your behavior is not correct. Therefore, I need to teach you this. Or like, I just need you to learn a lesson of stay the frick away from me, as well as everything else in my general area, because now you pose a threat. I don't know.
I just love this idea of a humpback whale bitch slapping an orca.
Oh, they do. Because I was like, I asked the guide, I was like, well, what do they do? Because orcas are big. And they were like, a full-grown humpback whale flipper with barnacles on it, that's a 15-foot flipper coming down on you with sharp, pointy barnacles. That's going to really fucking hurt.
That's a weapon.
So I think where I ended up on this is I think animals do understand right versus wrong. At least many of them. And I read another article where they listed out multiple ones. There are the obvious ones like elephants, dolphins, dogs, chimpanzees, rats, I think is interesting, are very empathetic and understand, I think, right and wrong. And rats also, they found like if there's multiple rats and one of them is caged and then they feel there's a threat, they will go rescue the other rat who they don't even have a relationship with, but they'll save the other rat to then help them get out. Or they'll give them food when they don't have to. Like rats very much help each other out, which I think is very sweet. And that's another thing where they think they understand, like, this is the quote unquote right thing to do based on how we have decided the right thing to do is. Cows are the same thing, obviously, whales, octopuses, because they will help each other. They'll like and help other species. They found, especially in captivity, how they're very like gentle and they can like sense when you're distressed. Gorillas, pigs, obviously. And the pigs one, actually, sorry, this is another tangent, but welcome to the way I think.
Jen is taking notes.
Yeah, she's like, this guy's freaking crazy.
I'm like, I see your brain.
Yeah, welcome to the way my brain just like spins.
The self-exploring questions are about to start. No,
I know, I have so many notes over here that I'm completely ignoring. I probably had a really good cohesive presentation at one point, and then I started speaking. Pigs brought up an interesting thing with the morality of certain kinds of farming, because if they understand right versus wrong and feel emotions the same way we do, or at least similarly to us, and obviously we know that like pigs, sort of their emotional like neurological makeup is sort of similar to ours. Damn it!
Keep going.
Should we do things like castrate or dock baby pigs in front of their mother, because their mother would view it similarly to how we would, a human mother would see her baby being done, because they do it without any kind of pain medication. And it's just because they can't verbally tell us. But most people don't verbally tell you if they feel like something is right or wrong. Most of what we go off of are physical cues anyway. So like, because a lot of people don't tell you when they feel like they've been wronged because of social constructs. So it's like, you know, you can't go. So when they say like, well, pigs can't tell you, it's like, well, most people don't tell you either, because most people have trouble verbalizing those things. And babies can't tell you either, which is why they did a lot of shit to babies upwards until the 1980s without proper pain medication. But yeah, so that brings up a thing with farming. Like, should we be more ethical with farming with things like cows and pigs and chickens? Because maybe they understand more than we think they do.
And Jen, I was going to gamble, like, is your perspective on right and wrong pretty fluid? Like, do you, like, in other words, when you engage with people, does that dimension of right and wrong kind of shift depending on the behaviors of the individual? Or do you have like certain, I'm going to gamble there's certain things that are just like, yeah, that's wrong.
It's so fluid. And honestly, I mean, I used to work in an inpatient substance use center, like, especially things people do under the influence. They're like acts that people have told me that I'm like, in a world where I don't have empathy for you and the person sitting in front of me, I could easily look at this and go, this is a bad person. But I'm of the mindset that even people who do the worst things, and there's plenty of them out there right now, that it's coming from a place of hurt and pain. Does it excuse the behavior? No, but I can understand how they got to that position.
And even like, I'm reading this book right now called Killers of a Certain Age, which is great, about 4 assassins who are retiring. They worked, like, their whole thing is they worked for an organization that worked outside the law, because they were like, justice very rarely reflects what's right and wrong. And it was like multinational. So it was like, we can't trust governments to decide what's right and wrong because they do what's politically correct, or what, not politically correct, but you know.
Which is in their interest, yeah.
That's so true. That's why we love Robin Hood, because Robin Hood does what's right and wrong.
I think of systems and the systems that support our culture, maybe, and how they're not really rooted with everyone in mind. And so some things that people do that are outside of the law might actually be supportive for their safety. And so I think keeping in mind, like, empathy is one part of the brain and survival is a different part of the brain. And we do things to survive sometimes that might not be considered following the rules.
Is like morality, quote unquote, would that be a different part of the brain from like an emotional, like empathetic part, or is that just not even to do with brain stuff at all?
So I'm going to pull the not a scientist card, right? So I could be completely wrong here, but like ultimately, like your downstairs brain, your amygdala brain, that's like act, respond. That's safety and survival. And morality, I think, does involve our frontal lobe of our thinking and our reasoning. And so like if those aren't connecting, which happens, especially if folks have trauma, which is the majority of us, we can't fully make a sound decision if we're activated.
Is there a thing as a non-trauma person?
I don't think so, but
I don't think so either.
I mean, everyone, from my perspective, right, maybe, but like everyone I've ever encountered, even folks who have said, like, I don't have trauma, a couple months down the line, they're like, oh, there's a same amount of safety that's required to even go there. And if they're not regulated in their body, one of the things you said about how we know is based on what we feel, and everybody's sensory system is so different that a light turning on might be activating to me where it's not to you, or a smell, right? So like we have to keep that in mind too. Of sometimes the way our body responds, we have to really learn to understand it.
All right, Ryan, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. I'll do my best.
You're going to be great. All you have to do is like spin together a consistent thought and you win. Goo.
So I too kind of struggled with this whole thing because I'm like, I don't know where to go with this. And like, just kind of did a mind tree a little bit and started to think about how we manipulate right and wrong. And actually, even to some degree, how I think right and wrong gets manipulated to make money. And the whole thought actually spurned originally from my 16-year-old dachshund, who I think we've gotten to the right place with my veterinary care for her. But I have this veterinarian that loves, or I don't work with her anymore, but loves to pull on your heartstrings as it relates. So like, just as an example, Zoe's 16. Like, we know that her kidneys aren't operating the way that they used to. That's not surprising. She's 16. She's incontinent. She's got problems with her rear legs working the way they used to. She still has a good quality of life and we continue to support her. But I've frequently asked the doctor under some of the care I've been like, so what are we achieving by doing this? Like, so you want to go get ultrasounds of her kidneys. I was like, what are you going to tell me? And they're like, well, we'll just have a better understanding of how the kidneys are functioning. And I'm like, so that you can tell me that they're failing and that she's dying, right? And they're like, well, yeah. And then I'm like, okay, so why would we do this? The thing is, it's pure profit. It's all about, because they wanted me to drop $600 or $800 to do this. And I said, so that you can tell me the same thing that we already know, so that we can establish the same storyline that we're already on, which is she's 16 years old and things are starting to fail. This is what happens when she gets old. And then it turns out, like, I don't think it's any sort of surprise. There are a whole bunch of industries that operate in this space. You have lawyers in the legal industry. You have insurance companies. You have religion and spiritual institutions, journalism and media, politics, big tech and social media manipulate it, healthcare and pharma, education and test prep, military and defense. So we have whole industries and whole cross sections of our society that are just built around basically what is right and wrong and what side of right and wrong do we sit on, as well as kind of manipulating that understanding so that we collectively go in one direction or another, which then allows for, in my opinion, well, not my opinion, it's pretty obvious, it's for profiteering. So I was like, okay, that's kind of like my deep dive, like kind of whatever. And then I sat and I thought to myself, and I'm like, where is a time in my life where I thought I was really right, but I ended up being like really wrong? And my reflections took me all the way back to high school. So there's this like story. So my sister had ballet classes, and I think she had ballet classes like 2 to 3 days a week. And usually what would happen when my mom would get home from work, she would pick up both of us and drop my sister at ballet. And then my mom and I would go futz around together for like an hour and a half to 2 hours, like just out and about. And it was actually really solid time between me and my mom. Lots of good memories from then and that time. But there was this one time in particular where I got home from school, went to my bedroom, shut the door, turned on music, and I did not hear a damn thing. And I forgot that it was a day that my mom was picking up my sister. So my mom picked up my sister. I didn't respond to the calls to come down, and my mom leaves. So I come out of my room, my bedroom, and I can't find my sister. Like, I have no clue where she is. I'm not recalling that this has happened. So now I'm like running around the house. I'm like, Reagan, where are you? Like, that's my sister. Like, where are you? And I end up like outside the house, and I end up like walking around. Like we lived on a 13 house cul-de-sac, and I'm like walking around the cul-de-sac, like looking for her. And of course, like I run into other neighbors and neighbors' children. And one neighbor in particular, I forget the woman's first name. I just remember their last name was Sposa. And now Miss Sposa is joined the crew of people where we're like actively searching for my sister around our neighborhood. So it's turned into like a bit of a scene. And like Miss Sposa like comes into our house, and we're like looking around my house together. And I've talked about my mom a little bit before. Very fastidious individual, like also, I think a little bit image conscious in terms of like would never want anyone from outside of our family to see what the inside of our house looks like if it's not put together and cleaned. And the house was never a wreck, but it was just maybe not the way that my mom would want to present it to others. So anyway, we're like out and we're like walking around, and I think I'm doing the right thing. I've organized a search party for my sister. We're going to figure out where Reagan has gone. And also keep in mind, this is before cell phones, or my mom did have a cell phone, but it wasn't like, this is a time where like you didn't necessarily have it on all the time. You know, you had it with you for emergencies. So couldn't get through to the cell phone. And we're back out in the court, and here comes my mom. She pulls up, my sister's in the front seat. And I'm like, oh my God. And I was like, Reagan is with you. And my mom is like, yeah, dummy. It's dance day. Like I took your sister to dance. And like Miss Spose is standing there like, oh, okay. Well, then there's no problem. Well, so my mom does not like this Miss Sposa individual at all. She sees her as a busybody. So my mom is now like really put out, not only that I have created this whole hubbub around this thing, but I've also now let Miss Sposa into our home when it's not in a way that my mom wants to present it, which then turns into this like, my mom is enraged. And I think the other kind of funny part is we didn't know this until later on. My mom had these like epic moments as we were growing up where she just kind of like would lose it. And we now know, like, I didn't realize like the reason my mom would get crazy migraines and other things was interrelated to her cycle, for lack of a better way of putting it, to her period. And so I happened to do this when we were at one of these moments, and I will never forget it. I was standing in the kitchen, and my mom grabbed this giant stack of magazines, picked them up over her head, and threw them through the air and screamed at the top of her lungs. So magazines are going everywhere. My mom is like screamed, and it was like, why would you let her in our house? And she's like, and then she's just kind of chastising me for being an idiot about forgetting that my sister had gone to dance. And, you know, I looked back on it, and the thing was, I had the best intentions. I meant the best in my like behaviors, but I was kind of wrong in terms of, well, I guess I wasn't wrong, but I just made a pretty big mistake, and it like created just a whole bunch of drama.
You see our faces right now.
Jena's gone into full therapist mode, and I feel like we're having the same thought. And I'm really proud that I think I had the same reaction as you, Jena.
I'm curious of what your reaction was.
I don't think, Ryan, that you were in the wrong here. I don't think this is the best example of right versus wrong. So I think you had a natural reaction of empathy and worry, and you acted in a way that showed that you loved your sister and wanted to care for her. Like you were doing with the best of intentions, and your mother couldn't see that because she couldn't get over her own ego of her house. So like she was working on something herself. I don't know. Maybe I'm very wrong. But I don't think you were the wrong one here.
Yeah, I don't think I intended to do this. I thought I was just trying to come up with a story that I thought might interrelate to right and wrong, and I've lost but won on some level. I don't know.
Did we just have a breakthrough?
I mean, you were a child, right?
I mean, I was a teenager.
You were a child. Teenagers are still children. I like to remind myself of that because it's easy to forget. But like responsibility is what I was seeing, dedication to your sister, panic, knowing that you were in it yourself and your sister was potentially like gone. You went to an adult, which is what I know I would tell my kid to do. And instead of your mom being like, thanks so much for making sure your sister was okay, it was like, here's some magazines. Like, here's my rage for you to hold.
Mm. I hope my mom
Literally.
doesn't listen to this episode.
Well, I think if we circle back to right and wrong, right? Like, and this is really important. Like, can we understand when people are dysregulated and they have their feelings and they should have done something maybe, but they chose to follow what was coming up most in them? Is she wrong or bad for that? No, she's just a human. And did you deserve something better? Yes.
That's fair.
It's really gray. And I think constantly changing. Like I saw a thing where it's like, should we judge like George Washington? And it's like, well, I mean, granted, you can't put away what people did in the past that was horrible, but like sometimes people, maybe it's not the best example, but sometimes people are just doing their best with what they got, right?
I think too, good and bad, right and wrong, like that's a way for our brains to make sense of and structure something. And I was literally on the way here this morning, I put a note in my phone that it's a sentence, but it says, because, structure can be really helpful, but I put when structure turns into rigidity, the intention of regulation becomes avoidance. So when we look at, is this right or wrong? What we're not usually looking for is it actually right or wrong? But we're looking for, how do I make sense of this and move on? How can I like put someone into a category easily so I can see if they're safe to me? And it's not that simple.
Yeah, and doesn't right or wrong just come primarily the core of it is down to safety, right?
Sure.
Is it like that is a bad thing because it's causing me potential harm? That is a good thing because it's something that is beneficial to me.
I think it depends on the way you look at it. The way I look at right and wrong is like, I hope people look at like, what are your values and is this behavior aligning with those values or not? Because like we can easily label someone, but what we're really saying is how you're treating me isn't okay.
You know what's funny is the other like memories that I have associated like this that kind of are like this. I'm very cognizant of the fact that my mom, like one of them, like my mom wasn't well. Like she had a migraine and whatever else, and it related to the same thing. So in other words, I knew what it was related to. This one I did not, for example. Like I just didn't know that's what was happening at the same time. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, no, not that this matters. You're literally just hearing external thought at this point. This is literally...
White noise. No,
Yes. On that note, I'm going to go over in the corner and cry, and I'll see you guys later. No, I'm just kidding.
That felt like such a hug moment, but we're in 3 different places. Oh man, now it feels weird to be like, Jena, who won? Like...
Do you know what's good? Is my therapist listens to the podcast, so... Hey, buddy.
Oh, perfect.
This was for you. Let's make sure we talk about this at the end of next week.
Hey, buddy, I want to meet you.
Hey, buddy, I'm fine, though. I'm trauma-free. Don't you worry.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I mean, I guess the structure is to pick a winner. I don't know. How do we feel about that today?
Yeah. What do you want?
I mean, I think this is very Jena coded, though. I think both of you had really great points. And I think those points were even different. That, like, if I could call it a truce, I would.
Great. I'll take a truce on this one. We both win. Everyone's a winner today. So, Jena, what will we be discussing next week?
So, I brought a friend. This is a tiny, I guess if we're not on a video, they can't see it, but this is a tiny worm. So here's the thing. I work with a lot of neurodivergent people. I myself am neurodivergent. What we love is fun, trinkety dopamine things. And so we have a little trinket exchange in the front lobby for folks who want to come and share like that. And there's a concept called pebbling, and it's something that penguins do. And I recently found out that Michael is a penguin fan, which really wrapped this all up for me very nicely. So penguins that's how they show love. And they like bring little trinkets and things like that. So pebbling is going to be your next topic.
I love this. Yeah, I have a penguin on it's the home screen, whatever you call it, on my phone from when I was on a trip and we were in a penguin colony, and this little adolescent penguin and I sat and just stared at the ocean together for like 10 minutes and literally just had this moment of pure zen with a little adolescent penguin.
And Jenna, what did I told you what pebbling reminds me of.
You did. I was worried about saying pebbling for this reason, but
I said pebbling reminds me of what happens when I take Zepbound and need to go to the bathroom.
Oh, God. Well, that's actually not what I thought you were going to say, so great.
Hydrate.
Oy.
Water is good.
Do you know what's funny, Jenna, is like, as we all know, my internet connection has been shit through this thing, and your video is not high quality. And all I could see you holding up was like a little pink thing, and I thought it was a little pink penis. I thought it was a little... That's what it looks like because of the video quality. And I was like, oh God, what is she holding up and where is this going?
In my office.
In your office.
Well, what's funny is we celebrate Pride here in September because we're in North Carolina. And so it's in 2 weeks, and I bought a bunch of little trinkets for it, and they sent me this giant pack, and in it, I'm like, wait a second, there's some like tiny penises. And I'm like, amazing. So I'll send you one.
It reminded me, I have these little penises that are meant to go, they have like a little hole in the back. They're like little dildos, and they're intended to go on light switches. So I take them with me when I go to people's parties and I deposit them on people's light switches.
That's so funny.
That's my form of pebble.
That's hilarious. All right. Well, we'll be back next week for pebbling. Jenna, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna.
Oh my God, this was a blast.
This was great.